All right, so looking at this one, what we're going to do is first thing we have to do here is square both sides in order to nullify that radical right there, which is the square root. So whatever the radical, whatever that index root is, that's what we raise both sides to. And so if there isn't a value there, it's understood as being a 2. So I'm going to square both sides. So that will nullify my square root to where the 20 minus x will come out. And then equals, then we have x squared here. So at this point, we're dealing with a quadratic equation now. And so with quadratic equations, in our first couple of sections of this unit, we either factored, we used the square root property, or we did the quadratic formula. And so factoring is always going to be the easiest one if it's available. And so either way, what we need to do is set this equal to 0. So typically I want to keep my x squared positive. If it turns negative, we can still solve it. It just makes the process a little bit more complicated. So we want to keep x squared positive. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by adding an x here. So then I have to add an x here, and I have to start a new column because I can't add it directly to x squared because they're not like terms. And then same thing with this 20. I'm going to subtract 20 here. So then I'm going to have to subtract 20. Once again, I kind of create a new spot for that. And so what happens here is all the stuff on the left is going to cancel out. So I'm left with 0 equals x squared plus x and then minus 20. And then now we're going to try to factor it. And if it doesn't factor, then we'll go into the quadratic formula, but it should be factorable. So what we're trying to do is figure out two numbers that will multiply to give me negative 20, but then if I add those same two numbers, they'll add up to a positive 1. And so let's see. So we're going to break this into two binomials. And so the first part of each one's going to be x and x because the x times x is where the x squared comes from. Now we're trying to figure out what multiplies to give us that negative 20, but add up to 1. So it should be a plus 5 and a minus 4. And so, see, if you were to FOIL this, it would be the same thing as this. These two things are the same thing. They're just written in two different forms. But now, this helps me answer this question here. What will make it equal 0, right? What will make this equal 0? Well, if either one of these factors is 0, then the whole thing will equal 0 because they're getting multiplied together, right? And anything times 0 would be 0. So you take each one of these factors and set them equal to 0 and solve them. So for one of them, we'll get negative 5. And for the other one, we get positive 4. Okay, so here's the issue though. Whenever we square both sides, we potentially are creating a false solution, an extraneous solution that actually does not work. And so I have two potential solutions here, and it's possible they both work, but most of the time what's going to happen is one will work and one will not work. And so the only way we're going to know is by checking it. So we're going to check it next. So let's see, we can start with the negative 5. And you need to plug it into the original. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to erase this so I don't get confused. You need to plug it into the original here and here. So let's see. I'm going to get the square root of 20 minus negative 5. And does that equal negative 5? So I want to see, does my answer that I came up with, does it work? And let's see, so this double negative will become addition. So I'm going to end up getting the square root of 25 right there, right? When I add the 5 to 20. Does the square root of 25 equal negative 5? No, it doesn't because it's 5. So I'm ending up with a false statement. So what that tells me is that negative 5 does not work. Okay, now most likely that means that 4 will work, but we want to check it just to make sure. So let's see, x equals positive 4. So once again, we're going to plug it in those two spots. So 20 minus 4, does that equal 4? Once again, we're kind of asking ourselves, does that work? Well, 20 take away 4 is 16. Does the square root of 16 equal 4? Yes, it does. True. Square root of 16 does equal 4. So when I let x equal 4, it did satisfy my original equation up here. And so that is my answer.